All right, hey, good evening. It is 24 January 2023, and this is John Kreutzer and Brandon Arvin here with Smoking Lamp Scholars. This is our second episode. The first one went completely viral. We had like 100 views. Brandon's going to talk about our huge success with that later on, but it should not be lost that our first episode was recorded and then published on Friday the 13th. This was executed flawlessly. Friday the 13th waited until today to come around and visit us. Had several technical difficulties getting the microphones up. We're going to incorporate a slide in post-production, which sounds like I've got a crew like Joe Rogan. I got somebody Googling stuff for me. But most importantly, I thought I hit record and I didn't. Fortunately, we caught that about 10 minutes in. So we're gonna shift gears and kind of invert what we were talking about, the way we're talking about, so it comes naturally.
Yeah, we're gonna make it seem like, we totally just didn't mess up, and this is all just a completely natural conversation that we didn't just have 5 minutes ago.
Literally, and not recorded. But yeah, Brandon, why don't you tell us about our viral experience?
Yeah, what's interesting is that I don't know this space. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not familiar with it. So when we hit like 100 views, I naturally, right, like it's a big deal, right? Like I started selling merch, right? Like I went to my son and I was like, dude, check out your dad. It went viral, and he was like, how many views? And I said 100. He naturally laughed at me, made fun of me. And then he even went so far to say that he was telling his friend about it. So like at the laugh at me behind my back. So really interesting. But at the end of the day, and I think we got like, I don't know, 10 subscribers. So like, in my mind, like this thing has blown up, and it couldn't have been more successful. Now, if my son is listening, then he's probably like laughing, knowing that apparently I don't know what I'm talking about. But in any case, I would say that for those people that did listen to our first episode, and even though we didn't say much, but those who did provide some feedback, and those that did choose to kind of help steer us of, what they think would be most beneficial to this community, we really appreciate that. And we're going to deliver, because today we're going to talk about like, hey, here is the scheme of maneuver, right? And you guys can poke fun at us for using all the military jargon, but John and I, in my office, we decided just to chop it up, throw it up on a whiteboard, because I'm not capable of making plans without a whiteboard. So went ahead, chopped it up, threw it on the whiteboard, and then like, all right, like in true military fashion for 2023, we put it on a slide. So that's what we're going to share now. So
Right.
Take it from here. I mean, we could do this all over again, right? We're going to do it several times. But I think John's recording now, and we could probably
I've seen it. It's in the screen.
Yeah, we can go ahead and start kind of outlining like, the path we want to take.
Right. And for the young folks listening, I just want them to know that this is bussin' no cap for real. That's man, your son's gonna laugh at us now. If he didn't already laugh, he's really gonna laugh about that.
Yeah.
So what we did is we sat down and we came up with like 6 big blue arrow topics that we wanted to discuss. And then underneath each of those topics are subtopics. And for those listening, if there's something that you think would be interesting, if you have something you can contribute, if you'd like to, be on the podcast, please reach out, contact us. We're always looking for interesting people who have value added content to bring, to the group to help light that way. Going back to like standing on the shoulders of giants and learning from other people's trials, tribulations, successes, and probably a lot of failures. There's a lot of value in that. So the first topic that we're going to discuss again, that we're going to bring to the table. We're not discussing it today, but to kind of outline what we like to move through, the kinds of folks we like to bring on the topic of real estate. And this is wildly popular now. You've got, there are television shows about real estate, which probably may be very misleading. There's some excellent podcasts about real estate. But as military members who have access to things like a VA loan, who constantly move around all over the country, this can be a great source of passive income. So under that umbrella of real estate, we'd like to educate people on lending, specifically for our VA eligible veterans. What does this mean? What can you do with the VA loan? I know when I was a young staff sergeant, I was terrified of buying a house. And if I had the education I do now, I would have, air quote, house hacked my way through Quantico, Virginia, and had great success. But lending is just one of the topics we want to talk about. Licensing. I know Brandon is mid-stride right now with his North Carolina real estate license. I was able to complete my Texas real estate license from Okinawa, Japan. That was without leaving the island. So we'll have an episode where we talk about the companies that we went with, some of even our study habits. How were we able to learn all this material in 90 days, about 90 days or less? This is totally doable. The cost is very insignificant to get an awesome education to where now you can conduct real estate transactions. The next topic being networking. In any industry, networking is huge, absolutely huge. Even more so in real estate. And there's someone I look up to. His name is Ryan DeApril. He owns a real estate business that is licensed in several states. And one of the things that he always says is your network is your net worth. It's a fancy way of saying it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
But surrounding yourself with successful people, and then going back to, like, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I need to pull the fire alarm or run out of that room and absolutely find a different room. And that's what we like to do, is bring on people, expand everyone's network who's listening, so you can get a little bit of information from all these different folks. Home inspections. It's like opening the hood of your vehicle, and you may not want to do it because you're afraid of what you'll find. It's something that the buyer absolutely has to pay for. It's where nightmares can come true, but more importantly, the worst nightmare would not be doing it and then discovering that you've got some serious structural issues or other issues in that house that you didn't know about. Moving on to the BRRRR, and I'm probably going to butcher this. So Brandon, I'll let you take that acronym because I'm going to put one of those R's somewhere where it's not supposed to go.
Well, the good news is that all the R's are together, but so the BRRRR acronym is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, right? It's synonymous with, or commonly used in the house hacking realm. And like Al, you had mentioned, man, about how those that move around all different places, eligible for a VA loan, that's some of the house hacking that's possible with that VA loan. And it can help jumpstart you into that BRRRR method.
Right. Again, if I had this knowledge, man, 10 years ago, dude, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, every day would be Christmas, would it not? So within that BRRRR, are still discussing the real estate umbrella, things like Airbnb, and so short-term rentals in a military town or even outside of military towns, what that can mean for you in terms of passive income. We touched on house hacking already. And I know Brandon and we've each had our own adventures, small but adventures nonetheless, into the realm of real estate and passive income. And it's a phenomenal way, for folks who we'll be honest, the military is, your paycheck's not a cash cow. You do okay, but with these tools, with this knowledge, this information, access to these loans, and then your ability to kind of do this all over the country, it's a great opportunity to build generational wealth. And it's amazing. It's something you should absolutely consider while in active duty, because once you transition, whether it's 4 or 40 years, you'll be, I hate to say it, set up for success, but you're going to have access to a lot of funds and the ability to do these things that most people wouldn't even think of or are afraid to. And I think that's the biggest thing about real estate that kept me from getting into it, was just a fear that I won't be able to do this. And our goal is to bring, whether lenders, real estate agents, home inspectors, people who have done this, property managers, and educate people and show them that, yes, this is 100% possible. It's not nearly as hard as you think.
Right.
So let's shift gears to our next topic, Brandon.
All right, so the next topic, you're looking at like mental health, right? All things, and I won't, how do I say it? I guess you could say all things mental health, but something that I'm pretty passionate about is the things, how to deal with things that maybe, injuries on the inside, right? So we talked a little bit about this during the first episode of, it's not just your military community that has to deal with trauma or has to deal with having a bad day at work. And in some cases, probably in most cases, like your first responders are going to be that type that deal with it probably more frequently, considering that there's just not that many wars going on at the moment. So mental health is something that we're going to touch on, and a few of the topics within that. I'm going to talk about nonprofits. I'm going to talk about the disability, filing a disability claim, how that process works, so that those can be aware. Alternative forms of therapies, right? Different forms that may not just take the shape of, let's get a prescription or medication. I know I've done several of those, and they've all been extremely beneficial. I'm going to talk about, TBIs a little bit, and hopefully share some information that is not very common. Maybe kind of remove some of the stigma,
Right.
what those TBIs, what can cause those TBIs, and perhaps point to, like, I won't say diagnosis, but like, I know that a lot of people would be very surprised to find out that many of the symptoms they have could be related to a TBI. And lastly, within the mental health realm, something very unique to military is they have the opportunity to go to Intrepid Spirit. Today, I got discharged from Intrepid Spirit. It was an outpatient program. It was awesome, right? And I got nothing but positive things to say about it. I know, John, you're getting ready to start Intrepid Spirit.
That's right.
So I have nothing but good things to say about it, but it is a unique clinic that is available to active duty service members. So I think it's definitely something, again, trying to like push that information out there, because I'm embarrassed to say that I found out about it only 6 months ago, right? And that's just not, I don't think that's acceptable, right? To have such a great resource that is 5 minutes from our work, right? And like that's something I should have sought more information out about a long time ago. Beyond the mental health, John, if you want to go over some of the side hustles.
So I'm a hustler, man. I was born a hustler. What I mean by that, pushing a lawnmower around the neighborhood, it was like a 9-10-year-old kid. Back when I lived in Indiana, carrying a snow shovel, charging $1 to shovel the snow on driveways. I even had an adventure in the firearms industry as a staff sergeant with side business. So I love side hustles. I'm an entrepreneur in spirit. I love that kind of stuff. So I get really excited when people talk about side hustles, secondary incomes, or even something that someone's spouse puts together. And that's the cool thing about military communities, is you've got people from all over the world, all over the country, with all these experiences, and they're all kind of come together on like Camp Lejeune. You can find somebody, my wife, for instance, is going to cook the best lumpia in the world, or you've got other people that have woodworking shops in their garage, they do it on the side. So it's something I'm very passionate about. I get excited about, and I love to hear about other people's side hustles. So and one of my goals for 2023 is to get up with you, man, and figure out this RV thing. So RV rentals, I didn't even think about this until you brought it to my attention, Brandon. You just want to give me one or two sentences on that, because I think that's really exciting.
I've said this several times, it was the easiest, most profitable turnkey business I think I ever got involved in. And we can talk more about it, in later episodes, but buying an RV and then renting it out on third-party apps. All I'll say is that I've not made a payment, just because people reach out and they rent the RV. So it's a great form of maybe not passive income, because it does take a little bit of work to prepare for when someone's going to depart. But I think it's a great side hustle.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that conversation. Another thing we talk about is e-commerce, and we won't use my experience, but I was able, if you can put a PowerPoint presentation together, I made a website several years ago selling my wares online. And I know of folks who have embroidery machines. They sell unit patches. One gentleman I know, he's telling me he makes more money doing that than he does as an active duty staff sergeant. So whether you're selling something on Etsy or whether you have your own website, there's a lot of opportunities in e-commerce. That's just part of the world we live in. As something very exciting. It is the great thing about that is you could potentially do that from anywhere in the country, potentially from anywhere in the world, depending on how creative and how resourceful you are. So I'm a history major, minor in art history. So this next topic is going to sound a little odd. Cottage industry. So what is a cottage industry? You could think of your town butcher, baker, candlestick maker from back in the day. So these things you can do in your house, whether going back to my wife's wonderful lumpia, whether you're making, you're making food, you're doing food prep. There's a lot of cottage industries that you can do, even something like a personal trainer on the side, web development. There's a lot of things that you can do in your house as a side hustle to make money. And I'm super excited about that. I love hearing about people's creative ideas. Then lastly, sort of like the RV thing, but Turo is an app that it's essentially Airbnb for your car. Hopefully Mike and the boys aren't sleeping in there, but I thought I'd throw that out there. So hopefully no one's sleeping in there. But I heard about this from the Bigger Pockets podcast, and it's very much like you were doing, Brandon, with the RV, but with a vehicle. So you're not making payments; people are paying into this vehicle for you. And if you've been, looking at what's going on in the automotive industry with regards to supply, demand, used cars now be more expensive than they were to leave the lot. It's definitely an opportunity to make some money, and I love the idea. I think that's really cool. And then we'll shift gears, and our next topic is
so going into not a pun here, but transition. And that transition will be transitioning from the military, transitioning from your first responder career. We're going to focus a lot more on transitioning from the military, just because at this point, there are a lot of people that are willing to provide kind of like their do's and don'ts of how they did it. So within that, we're going to talk about, the programs that the Marine Corps has, right? Whether you're required to attend this program to transition. And I know every branch of service has a different spin on it, probably a different acronym. But there's also opportunities within SkillBridge, right? SkillBridge is something that, again, same thing, not that long ago, it was not common. Nobody would be trying to do a SkillBridge on the way out of the military. Now it's becoming extremely common, right? So there's a lot of different resources within SkillBridge program. Other things, of course, like within resume writing, preparing yourself to enter whichever industry or sector that you're looking for, and then using that GI Bill, whether that's a post 9/11 GI Bill, the Montgomery GI Bill, the pros and cons of each.
And it would be cool to touch on is even the process to pass that on to your dependents, whether it's your spouse or your children, and then importantly, making sure that actually went through, because
Right.
yeah.
And that was something also not that long ago. I know at least in the Marine Corps, you could only transfer those entitlements during a reenlistment. To where now, as I understand, and again, I don't want to talk out of school on it, but as I understand, it's something that is easier to transfer. Because I know, like me, like I transferred all of my GI Bill to my 3 kids.
Right.
So those are a few things of, like, just the transition of how to prepare for that. I'm really excited about that, especially as you and I both are preparing to transition and retire from the Marine Corps. So I would definitely say I'm looking forward to that segment, probably more than others, just because, for probably selfish reasons of, like, I'm going to be sitting here taking notes probably. So next topic, John, if you want to cover that, this is another, I think, really exciting topic.
So this is current ops, like what's going on in the world. And I think we obviously want to bring value added to the table, but I think that it's also I know that we have some of the same perspectives on things, and I think we also have some very diverging perspectives on things. And amongst our network, we have a multitude of people with very eclectic views. And just talking about current events, like what does this mean? Whether it's your headline articles or events that take place, I think that that framing them with our experience, our military backgrounds, how oftentimes things are either blown out of proportion with the media, or the media really under delivers on the importance of other topics. I think it's good to get a perspective, from folks who've spent time overseas, or spent time analyzing world events, current events, geopolitics, things at home, what's important to us, whether it's legislation coming out having to do with military pay and benefits, or whether it's just what's going on in our own country, whether it's a capital city somewhere or our own backyard. Talking about current events and staying up with current events is very important, and I think we can do it in a manner that at least be mildly entertaining.
And I'd also say some of it, like we just cover like what's going on this week, right? Like I know, like, for example, right now, like I'm selling my home, buying a new home. I'm gonna have the privilege of moving my parents down to North Carolina to live with us. There's just a lot of lessons learned and probably opportunities for people to poke fun at me for like mistakes, or just we talk about Murphy's Law, right? Like just all the things that can go wrong, they just decide to go wrong, whether that's at work, whether that's an ad hoc wrestling match that shows up of like, oops, I forgot about that. Hey, we have a wrestling match tonight. So some of those things I think are, I won't say like it will be, hugely beneficial to those listening, but I often find that once I realize that others are dealing with similar problems like I'm dealing with, like we just call it like the 9-to-5 stuff that we all have to carry. It does help me appreciate a little more of like, okay, so you're dealing with the same stuff I'm dealing with, and you're also trying to find the time to do these other things. Okay, I can relate with you a little more. So hopefully, because I would never want you and I to come across as somebody that's on a pedestal, right? Of like, here's how you should do this, because that would be misleading. I think at best, and it would just be fraudulent at worst. Like, that's not at all like how our lives go.
I think if I were to sit on a pedestal or stand, the verbiage below would be like, as a warning to others.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, maybe take what this guy's saying. I mean, we learn so much from failures, from mistakes, and we're all human. And like, I was going to share this story earlier, but like I call it the homework wars, where just trying to get through, my youngest daughter get through her homework. And it's like when I was growing up, I didn't want to do something, I would just generally, okay, I'm just going to do it. My brother, though, he would fight it. He had a fighting spirit. And much like with my youngest, for instance, my dad would have us cut the grass, and my brother and I are 2 years apart. So the first week I cut the grass, then his turn comes up, and instead of just cutting the grass or doing the homework and just getting through it, bear down and do what you got to do, generally a conversation would ensue, and then an argument, and then by the time said argument was over with, the grass could have been cut 2 or 3 times over. So much like, with today's homework wars, the homework could have been done, and, God forbid you learn something from it, and instead, like we have tears and we have trials, tribulations. At the end of the day, the homework's it's still getting done. The grass is going to get cut, man. How do we want to skin that? Do you just want to do it, or do you want to fight it? But yeah, just like any other parent, man, we deal with, we all deal with the same stuff. We're just trying to live the same life, getting through the same stuff. So I think that's important to bring a humorous and human, side to what we're doing. If you've got some interesting situations there, Hunter listeners, that you'd like to share, throw them in the comments, or if it's good enough.
I love how we're talking as if like we have like so many followers. I love it. Like the idea that we're like talking to this audience, and there's probably like, one person at a time that's just been disconnected 200 or 300 times, and now they're logging back on to like watch this episode.
Yeah, for all I know, could have my oldest daughter is hitting refresh.
Yeah, right. It's probably just me and you that are just kind of like, going back and forth. We'll throw it on YouTube just for kicks.
Right on, man. All right. So our last topic here, financial health. You want to tackle that one?
We'll round this up, round it out here. Overall financial health this is going to be more of like, us discussing probably more of the conventional ways to do financial planning, all different types of investment vehicles, also looking at retirement plans that are afforded to the military, and then even within the private sector. Some people are more familiar with like the thrift savings plan for the military, IRAs, Roth IRAs. Now in the military, like the blended retirement system, I think, which, as I understand, again, it's after my time, but as I understand, if you really take advantage of that and you are smart with your investments, that can yield much greater results than the typical do your 20 years and get a military pension. Also covering things like tax planning, right? Because with all of these, we'll call them extracurricular things, they're going to generate income, and you're going to have to know how to plan for that whenever you prepare your taxes, whether that's something you do on your own or that's something you outsource. And then lastly, kind of just overseas considerations. And I would say overseas considerations on nearly any topic that we've discussed, right? Because it's very easy, right, to sit here on Camp Lejeune and say, hey, here are all these things that are available to us. And then you catch orders to Okinawa, and I know a lot of people will be like, I'm going to put those things on hold. And I think, you've been to Okinawa.
Oh, yeah.
Been to Okinawa, right? I think what we've learned is you maybe don't have to put them on hold. You just need to approach it a little differently. Yes, it's going to be harder to rent an RV if you are in Okinawa and you want to rent out your RV. That is more challenging because you're not physically next to it. However, you just have to approach it a little differently. Because I do know that, even me, right? I had a rental property while I was in Okinawa, but that was just because it was a bad time to sell. That was not because I was forward thinking and I'm like, you know what, I want to make some extra, some passive income. That couldn't be further from the truth. It was nothing more than a necessity. It's not a good time to sell. I'm going to keep this. But if
Lucky
I'm being
mistakes.
honest, it was a burden the entire time because I was looking at it like a burden. And I
Right.
think if I would approach it a little differently, I would have found a way to take advantage of it much different, much better, better than I would have that I did in the past.
I
So I
think
think
I'll,
overseas
okay.
considerations can be applied over all of this, right? Because there's a lot of people that will catch orders to somewhere overseas. And I don't think it should be a reason to put things on hold, right? Because that's 3 years you're putting something on hold, typically.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that like when people catch orders, like they're either caught off guard. In my case, I volunteered for them, but in many cases, that's something you never anticipated or even desired. And I think coaching people through the proper mindset of like, this is doable. You can still maintain, whatever irons in the fire, if you will, that you have. This isn't something that you need to cut loose. And it's not maybe so much a resource issue as it is a resourcefulness issue. And again, like you were saying, Brandon, about, I called it successful mistakes or lucky mistakes. I was able to continue to manage my own property essentially from Okinawa, sold a house in Virginia from Okinawa, bought a house in Texas, all while in Okinawa. Things I'd never done before in terms of overseas, which is how to navigate those transactions. I think that's wildly beneficial, because I wouldn't want to see somebody get orders to overseas or a deployment or something and think like you got to power everything down, that we just got to turn the generator off and turn the lights off on this, because absolutely not the case, especially in with the information that we have in 2023, to keep those things going and continue to build wealth and continue to be successful. So yeah, I think that's a great topic, man.
All right. And that is essentially, I think, like at least the initial planning of this is kind of like where we'd like to go. It's going to spider web into probably several different, I hope not rabbit holes, but probably like things that, are very unique, or they're highly specialized. Well, then yes, it's going to probably, kind of go into some of the details on those. I would say though, like as John's already alluded to, like just put it in the comments of what you guys are looking for. Because again, we have the ideas of where we want to go, but if it's something that we haven't discussed, or if there's I would say a priority of like, a circumstance that you're in right now, you want to be maybe it's, you want to be a homeowner and you've been renting your whole life. You want to be a homeowner, you want to get the VA loan, and you want to buy your first home. Well, if the priority is, well, I don't want to talk about, RV rentals, or I don't want to talk about tax planning right now. Like, I would really like to know like how the lending process works and what tools are available to me as a service member, as a veteran. Okay, well, then we can prioritize that. I would say, I know we're about to wrap this up. For the next episode, though, I think we're still on the same page to where let's go over talking about licensing as a real estate agent.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it's something super, I won't discount it, like say it's so easy, but it can be done at your own pace, which I think makes it very appealing.
Yeah, not only that, but you're not going to pay. Yeah, I don't want to spend all my capital. I want to save some of that for the next episode, but it's the price of the education versus the amount of money you can make. And we're talking about easily less than $2,000 to have a license in hand. And the great thing about real estate is there's no salary cap. Now that also means like there's no salary bottom either,
Right.
So it's sort of a choose your own adventure world that you're going to enter into. But that's one thing that's very easy for me to talk about, and I really like to share that with folks out there. And then just to sort of recap again, we talked about for those listening, these aren't going to be Brandon and I entirely, speaking to these topics. We were planning on bringing in some phenomenal guests, some awesome experts to talk about these, and then we sit back and ask, going to ask the questions. There's questions you'd like to hear asked about mental health, about Airbnb, about nonprofits, tax planning, networking, whatever. Drop those in the comments, and we will absolutely field those questions to our guests.
Yeah, and I could go on about this for hours, but I am gonna have to cut this soon because I gotta go to my son's wrestling, his match. So I appreciate, thanks for giving me a call, man, and let's setting this up. And I'm already looking forward to because I have a lot to gain by listening to you talk about you getting your license, because I'm just in the first part of it right now, and that's just doing the education piece.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting. It's one of those things that I would recommend everybody do it, because you don't want to walk in. That's buying a house is going to be one of the biggest financial decisions of your life. I don't know if you're familiar, or if you understand, if you've got to this point, but mortgage in Latin means what is it? It's death promise. That's it, more mortuary, mortality, mortgage. So it's it goes back to the Latin phrase, something to the effect of you're making this commitment till death do you part. Right. And just again, being empowered with that real estate license, at least the education to understand what you're walking into, understanding what things, what the terms mean, understanding some of those nuances when you're making a financial decision that large. It's such a small investment in terms of time and money, and the reward will be exponential at many levels. But yeah, thanks for putting up with the technical difficulties, Brandon. I greatly appreciate that. Friday the 13th waited 11 days to show up, and in true Murphy fashion, it did. And then in our true fashion, we were able to kind of shoot, move, communicate our way through that. So you want to sign us out?
Yeah, this has been the second episode of the Smoking Lamp Scholars. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you back next time.
It's John and Brandon signing out. Take care, guys.